Hello and welcome to Season 9, Episode 8 of the Data Governance Podcast. And in this week's episode, I'm joined by the wonderful Malcolm Hawker, who I've known a number of years now. He's currently the CDO at Profisee. And I have a really lovely conversation with him, mainly centered on a conference that we're both going to be at in a couple of months' time. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Malcolm. This episode is sponsored by IRM UK's Data Governance, AI Governance and Master Data Management Conference Europe 2025. Join us in London the 17th to the 20th of March for the ultimate event in data, governance and AI strategy with 5 focus tracks, over 60 world-class speakers including me, Gwen Thomas, Mike Ferguson and Nigel Turner, as well as practical case studies. This is an event you cannot miss. Discover actionable insights, network with over 250 data professionals, and celebrate industry best practices. Learn more and register at irmuk.co.uk. And you can use code PODCAST10 at checkout to save 10% on your registration. So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Data Governance Podcast. And today I am joined by Malcolm Hawker, who I have known for a number of years and met at a number of conferences over the years. So Malcolm's an experienced business and thought leader with nearly 30 years of experience in helping organizations around the globe harness the power of data through customer and product-driven transformations. Now, Malcolm, you just know a lot, don't you, around data, master data management, data governance, data strategy. And you've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world to help drive data-driven aspirations. And I'm really, really envious being that it's January and it's really cold here in the UK. But when you're not doing, well, you do travel around the world a lot, don't you, doing data? But when you're not doing data, I love the fact that you and your wife are tending your tropical garden oasis and your beachside home in the east coast of Florida. That just sounds dreamy right now. But welcome to the podcast, Malcolm.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And yes, I was just out in my garden earlier this morning. It's a lovely day here in Florida.
Excellent. Don't rub it in.
Okay.
So anyway, we haven't, well, it's probably at least 2 months since we saw each other in person at a conference. But I'm going to see you in a couple of months again because you're coming over to the UK for the IRM Data Governance Conference and AI Conference Europe, aren't you?
I am excited. Coming back in early March. And it's a great conference. The folks at IRM and the team there does a wonderful job of putting on a great conference and very MDM centric and very governance centric. These are things near and dear to my heart. So this is kind of like my people, right?
Absolutely.
It's like my tribe. It's your tribe too. And anytime that I get to go hang out with the tribe, I love it.
Excellent. So you're not just coming to hang out though, are you? You're actually going to do the keynote on day 2. So tell me, what are you going to talk about this time?
I'm going to talk about the title of my keynote is Data Governance is Time to Start Over. So I am a believer in data governance. We absolutely positively need data governance, but time and time again, we hear stories or we see research reports or I talk to CDOs who are really, really struggling to use data governance as a business enabler to reach the full potential of data in an organization. We need governance, but for so many people, what we're kind of just doing is the minimum, right? We're keeping the auditors happy. We're keeping the regulators happy. We're doing what we need to do to make sure that, we have secure access to our data and that we've got controls around our data. But there's so much more we could be doing from a governance perspective. And I think it's time to start over. And that's the title of my keynote. Data governance is time to start over. I think we need to kind of reset and think about different ways of approaching governance. Think about a different mindset with governance. And what I'll be talking about is largely around the idea of pivoting from governance as a control mechanism to governance as an enablement mechanism. I love a thought exercise. I love thinking about or asking the question, if what would happen if we made our customers pay for data governance? If if they had to pay, would they? Can we get to a point in the future where somebody in sales, right, or somebody in finance, or a VP of sales or a head of global finance or something, where they would be willing and happy to pay for the services that a governance function provides, right? I mean, it may sound kind of silly to say, what do you mean I'm going to pay for stewardship, right? I'm the one doing the work, but this is a thought exercise. So play along. If you could actually, if governance was a product, would our customers want to buy it? That's kind of the thought exercise. So we'll go down a few interesting pathways in my conversation. I will challenge some of the status quo for sure, because I think we need to absolutely change the challenge the status quo. We'll talk about different ways of thinking about governance. We'll talk about different ways of potentially approaching governance, maybe even doing things like finding a different name, maybe. I mean, I know lots of us have been talking about that for a while, but
We
governance in and
have.
of itself, I mean, that's govern. That's like, right? Like that's control. We need that. It's not going away, but how do we get from where we are to where we want to be? What does it mean to kind of transform a governance function? That's what I'm going to be talking about in the keynote.
Wow, sounds great. I've never been a fan of data governance being about control, so um, that sounds really great to me. And to be fair, I love hearing you speak because you have such energy, and also you always talk a lot of sense. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your keynote, Malcolm. So have you had a chance to look at the rest of the agenda? Because it
I
looks
have.
pretty jam-packed to me.
It's a schedule of riches. It's going to be one of those situations where I won't know where to pick, right? I won't know what to where to go because I look at some of the tracks. First of all, there's an MDM track, so that's kind of like creating this gravitational pull. It's like an MDM guy getting pulled into MDM. So I'll have a hard time resisting a lot of those sessions because I want to hear what's going on. I want to hear what people are working on. I want to hear where people are innovating. So there's a natural draw to that.
Hmm.
Then there's governance, of course, near and dear to my heart. I'm going to be talking about it, but then we're also talking about AI and like so exciting to me. There's so many massive opportunities out there, Nicola, around kind of AI and AI governance. So it's the schedule looks fantastic. There's some fantastic speakers. There's some incredibly smart people. One of the things that I'm really kind of blown away by is the level of practitioner engagement here, meaning
Hmm.
especially on Monday. And you look at Monday morning, and it's people that are doing the stuff, right? Like they're doing the work. It's not vendors up there talking about selling products. It's not necessarily even I'm a CDO. Sometimes you can get like CDOs or senior level people who kind of talk theoretically about stuff. These are people that seem to be doing the work, and that's the type of conversation or presentation I'd love to hear.
Yeah, me too. It's a whole different ball game. I mean, I tend to, I'm known for training, so I tend to
Yeah,
talk theory, but actually theory's great. You need to do that to start with, but it's not until you try and implement it in real life that you actually start learning what works and what doesn't. So to hear
yeah,
people sharing real life examples of what they're doing and what has worked, and hopefully some of them will be vulnerable enough to explain what hasn't. It's so valuable for everybody in the
yeah.
audience listening to that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's for me, it's particularly the case when it comes to AI governance because I know that for a couple of years now we've been talking about like frameworks, and those are really important and needed. And it's great that there's a lot of people talking about, okay, this is what an AI governance framework might look like. Maybe
Mm.
that's something you cover in your training. Um, but we need to go from framework to actual, shovels in the ground. We need to actually start defining policies that can be actioned. For example, and I don't have the answer to this, by the way. This is a really hard question. But how would one quantify ethical data, right? I think we can start to talk about how do we quantify ethical behavior in a piece of software, like a copilot or a chatbot, right? Like or even a model. Like were the outputs of the model were they ethical or were they without bias? I think that's a little easier. But when we're looking at like the source data, like the raw data that is going into the model, if that's part of the equation, which I think it is, which I think it needs to be, how do we as data professionals and governance professionals apply rules at scale? Because you're talking about a lot of data. How do you apply rules that are kind of about ethics and bias at scale? I don't have the answer to that, and I'd be really interested to hear if there's people who are working on solving these types of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I've been having some interesting conversations. I'm sure you've been having similar about the perhaps AI governance and data governance should be done by the same people. But I mean, AI governance is a relatively new thing. So do we have
Yeah.
many experts in that? And, it's hard enough to be a data governance expert sometimes. And, now I've got to learn AI governance as well. So I think it's really, I'm with you. I think it's really exciting times, but also a little bit scary. So yeah, I've been quite drawn to that part of the agenda. But as you say, how can I not go to data governance? It's my thing.
Right.
It's really, really hard. So, were there any particular, maybe two or three sessions that particularly stood out for you, or are you still being drawn to too many?
There's a few on Monday. I'm really interested in hearing what the Bank of England has to say. So Abel
Ah, yes.
From the Bank of England is talking. I was without going into too much detail. I found myself in the Bank of England most recently. It's just it's this awesome, like very impressive. Maybe this is the tourist in me. I didn't know that the tube stop bank literally meant
Oh, Bank of
bank.
England. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
thought
it's
it was
amazing
like
building.
this is funny though. It's because like this is an exercise in semantics, right? Like and having semantic consistency. Because I thought like maybe it's like well, like is it a berm, right? Is it like it's something carved out of the side of a hill? And I mean no, it's actually the bank.
No, really,
Sorry,
really the bank.
I'm digressing. Really interested in hearing what the Bank of England is doing some of around these things. I'm interested to hearing from some old friends like Dara, who's a fantastic speaker. I'm interested to hearing what he has to say. The panel you're on looks like it'd be really fascinating with some really great speakers and some really talented people. So
It's very practical as well about how do we
yeah,
actually get data governance processes embedded in the business. So I'm really looking forward to that. And
yeah.
yeah, and I definitely encourage you to go to Abel's session. He was on the podcast a few weeks ago,
Oh,
and
I
he's a
did.
really, really great chap. So it's always
Yeah,
great to actually hear him speak in person as well.
yep. I'm interested to hear Frances O'Rafferty speak as well. I've interacted with her on LinkedIn here and there, and I don't think I've actually heard her speak.
Uh,
But highly effective data management, the habits of highly effective data management and AI success, like these types of things. I mean, this is like a kid in a candy store, right? Like, and I'm probably going to break some stuff too. But like, just the sessions look fantastic. I think it's going to be an amazing 2 days. Not to mention, all of the amazing networking opportunities and chances to interact with folks as well. So I'm totally excited.
Yeah, and I think that's touching on what you just said at the end is that, it's not just about, come to a conference to hear people speak. I mean, we can tell by looking at this agenda, there's going to be some amazing content. But the conference isn't just about hearing the speakers, particularly, I know you're as fond of the IRM conferences as I am. So what, on top of the amazing content, why else do you think somebody should attend?
Well, I mean, it's networking and interacting with folks. And to me, the IRM conferences are just the right size. Meaning in the breaks, right? In the coffee breaks, there's going to be people milling around and there's a reasonable number of people, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like a stampede. As odd as this is going to sound, I'm a little bit of a Myers-Briggs introvert. And sometimes if like at a Gartner event, and I'm ex-Gartner, there's a lot of energy and it's fantastic, but there's just like thousands of people and you're crammed in like sardines and you're being just kind of ushered around. That's not IRM. You're going to be able to go, you're going to have some great food. Their food is always
It is very good.
fantastic. It's always fantastic. You'll have some great food. You'll have the ability to get a coffee, to have a conversation with a data professional. You'll be able to say, "Hey, what are you working on? What's working? What did you come here to learn?" Right? And have conversations without actually having to scream, right? Like
Yeah,
when you're at a Gartner or at a Big Data London. I came back from Big Data London. I couldn't speak for 3 days because
yeah. I
because the
was quite
room
hoarse.
right because the room is just like this just cacophonous this giant room where you have to yell to be heard. So that's not IRM. This is professionals networking with professionals where you can have conversations with people that are doing the work, right? They're figuring out governance, they're figuring out MDM, and you'll walk away with having met a friend, right? Because you'll have these levels of conversation. So that's another thing that I'm really looking forward to is that quality of interaction. Everybody says you can network, right? Go to a big event, you can go to Big Data London and network, but this is just a little bit different. because you're not screaming and it's in a comfortable environment where
Yeah.
there's great food and great people and great chats. You're not going to be overwhelmed with vendors either. They're there, of course, because they have to pay for this great food somehow.
Yes.
It doesn't manifest itself,
Yes.
but they're not overwhelming either. So it's a
No.
great combination of all those things.
I think so. And I think I would say that, whilst I've had some amazing conversations, all variety of conferences, I think I probably have some of the most meaningful ones at the IRM
Right.
conferences.
Right.
So, wow, it's wow, I really can't wait to see you in person again. I'm sure the next 2 months will absolutely fly by, Malcolm.
Yeah, I'm
And
looking forward to it as well. There's two other presentations that I should have noted.
ah,
One is from my friend Gaurav Patel, and he is speaking on Tuesday. And Gaurav and I go back and forth on LinkedIn. He provides a lot of great insight on. He's with ThoughtWorks, and he provides a lot of great insight in some of my posts. And the other one that I should have mentioned that I am excited to see is from Irene Dirks. And this is on Monday afternoon, and she does a connecting the dot session. It's based on Lego. And her present, so I gave the keynote at the DGIQ conference in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, and her presentation was immediately before my keynote. So there's the first, they do a morning presentation and then they start with the keynotes. And I was doing prep. So I was like heads down and doing all of my prep. So I didn't get to see Irene's presentation. And people were raving about it. So I'm excited to catch up and actually be able to see her presentation.
no, that's a really good
prep.
point.
Yep.
She did that presentation at the Think Linkers Think Lab in
Oh,
Prague
okay.
in
Yeah.
October, but I could only go one day, and she was doing it on the second day, and it was so frustrating. She showed me her little booklet, and it's absolutely amazing. So you're right.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to hearing Irene.
Wonderful.
So it's been wonderful talking to you, Malcolm, and I'm really thrilled that next time it will be in person again. So have safe travels over here, and we look forward to seeing you in March.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it very much. We'll see you in March.
See you soon. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Malcolm. He's such an easy person to talk to, and I just love his energy and enthusiasm when he's talking. And if you are going to come along to the IRM conference in March, do let me know. I'd love to meet up with you, and I'm sure Malcolm would too. So that's it for this week. I hope you'll join me next week when I'm going to answer the question about whether you really need a data governance manager, because I'll be honest, it's something I get asked an awful lot by organizations who are just starting to do data governance and are really struggling to make the case for data governance, let alone the case for the budget for new headcount. So I hope you join me next week to find out my thoughts on the matter.